Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if you could, please find your seats and we'll get started. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we'll get started. First of all, welcome to the meeting tonight. It's great to see a full house, and we appreciate everyone being here. Mr. Bender, is your gentleman here? Okay, thank you. Mr. Jackson, could you come up to the podium for a second, please? Could you lead the council in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you.
Yes, sir. Please stand if you're able. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Mr. Toledano.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lorino. I'm very pleased to have Pastor Paul Smith step to the podium to lead us in the invocation. Paul's a good friend of mine, and just a little bit of background. He's one of our great ministerial leaders in this community. He's pastor of the Life Church. He's a national and international speaker. Paul has started 64 churches in the United States, Peru, and other countries. What a great accomplishment. He's an author. He's a national conference leader. During that time, he and his wonderful wife, Laura, have produced two wonderful sons. They're twins. They've been married 35 years, which shows great perseverance on her part. And he is one of our great community Bible study leaders, too. Paul, thank you very much for being here tonight.
Thank you. What a privilege it is to pray for you today. I want you to know this is not my first time praying for all 14 of you. And Madam President, it's a joy to always pray for you. I'm thankful to be able to pray for you in person because it's a rare privilege that I get to see anybody that wants to stand before God and give an account for their own life, much less people who are smart enough to want to stand before God on behalf of other people. And thank you for your service. Let's pray. God, I'm grateful for the leaders of this parish. God, as I've thanked you on many occasions for the wisdom and discernment and the spirit gift that you've given them of leadership to lead and guide us, God, that will be on display and exhibition tonight. I pray that you continue to infill them with the joy of being able to serve your people that you've created and the accomplishment of seeing what people can do when they come together to do what you've called us to be more effective and efficient in all of our service for your kingdom. God, I pray that you'll bless them, that God, you will redeem their time, and that God, you'll give them wisdom and discernment beyond their ability to see what's on a piece of paper or to hear what comes into their ears, but to be able to know what you're leading them to do. God, lead them, guide them, protect them, and fill them. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Smith. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Dean? Here. Mr. Fitzgerald? Here. Mr. Thompson? Mr. Toledano?
Present.
Mr. Tanner?
Here.
Mr. Belisario?
Here.
Mr. Lorino?
Here.
Mr. Groby?
Here.
Mr. Canulet?
Here.
Ms. O'Brien? Here. Mr. Stefanczyk?
Here.
Mr. Bender?
Here.
Ms. Blanchard? Mr. Smith? You have a quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. First thing we'll go over is public comment. Anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on any item that is on the agenda tonight, please fill out a card and we'll take it up and then you'll be allowed to speak on that. But that, once again, is on any item that is on the agenda tonight, and you'll have 3 minutes to do that. Anyone here for an appeal? Speaking time is 10 minutes per side, 3 minutes rebuttal, and 2 minutes conclusion. And whether or not you have one person or 10 people or 100, you have that 10 minutes. So I suggest that if there's more than one or more than a couple, that you figure out how you all want to handle that, because it will be a 10-minute period. Okay? Thank you. We'll go to presentations. Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I normally, for our presentation and proclamation, I certainly have one for Amy, but I'm going to not read it tonight because I want to talk about Amy myself. Amy works with me every day. Every day she is positive and the nicest person you can imagine on the phone to our clients, our citizens. Even when they're not happy, she tries her best to make things right. She does my scheduling, and that is not easy. I've thrown her curveballs day after day, and she just takes it right in stride and keeps going. But what I really want to talk about is what Amy does in addition to her job. As you know, we do many things during the year, public service things, charity events. We do in our charity, our Jean's Day charity. Amy does all of that. She puts all of that together and works to get volunteers to work on things. She's always the first one to volunteer. When we need employees to step up and be there with us for whatever we do, she's always the one that's there. So I wanted to personally thank her for all her work with the Heart Walk, United Way, Red Beans and Rice this year. We did both East and West this year, and she did them both and won prizes in both of those. Thank you again. The Heart Association, as I mentioned. But something else that stands out in my mind is during Hurricane or Storm Barry, whatever that was, you know that we have fewer people now in our public information office. And Ronnie needed someone to step in and help him, and Amy stepped right in and did an excellent job on that too. So I want to thank Amy personally for all that she does, and especially for putting up with me every day. So Amy is our Employee of the Month, and this proclamation says all of that and more, but I wanted to speak from my heart for Amy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Amy. Here's your proclamation. Thanks so much.
Amy, on behalf of the council, and I know you deal with all of us all the time, thank you very much for everything you do, and you're always a pleasure on the phone when we're speaking, so thank you, ma'am.
She is a jewel.
Go ahead, Madam President.
All right, this is not on your agenda. We have a little surprise for you tonight. You know, I get to do a lot of great things as parish president, and some are more fun than others. I'm going to ask Rick Badon if he'll come up and join me, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about something as Ronnie. Is Ronnie around? You running? Okay, you're going to start seeing something on this. This is a barge at Arcosa that they just launched. So I was able to go out and see this. This is right down in Madisonville on the river. That was one of the most fun things that I've had to do, or I've been able to do since I was president. So you do this all the time, Mr. Chairman, so I know it's not new to you, but it was to me. But come on up, and Rick, let me explain a little bit. As you know, Trinity Marine was in Madisonville for many years, and a lot of employees. And when they closed, they were closed for about 2 years, I think.
3 years.
Right at 3 years. And Arcosa came in a year ago.
Yeah, about January of this year.
January of this year, not even a year. And this barge was built there and just launched there. And that's a lot of work. So they put those employees back to work, and we appreciate their picking St. Tammany to do that, and we want to see more barges like that. And I want to be invited again.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate it. So I will read this one, and it is Certificate of Recognition. St. Tammany Parish Government hereby commends, honors, and thanks Arcosa Marine in recognition of a successful first launch and an appreciation for your commitment and service to your community and to St. Tammany Parish. On this 8th day of August, 2019, signed by Chairman Lorino and myself, and we thank you, and we will be here for you if you need us.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. We'll let-
Rick?
Mr. Chairman.
I just want to personally say thank you also because I passed there many days. That's my district, as you know, and it was closed for quite some time. And it really meant a lot to the people in Madisonville and St. Tammany Parish for you to come in and invest in that area and to put it to work. And I just want to say thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Bender?
Yes, sir.
Is your junior councilman here?
My junior council member is not here, Mr.
Okay.
Moreno. I'm not sure why, maybe sick, whatever, but we'll get him again.
Okay, well, I just wanted to make sure before I passed on, sir.
Yes.
Thank you very much. We'll go to number 3, presentation of certificate of recognition to Mr. Jackson Cantrell. Mr. Smith.
Mr. Chairman, and to my colleagues at the dais, we are so thankful to be able to make this presentation this evening to this young man who represents a staple in our community called education. And being a native of St. Tammany Parish, I thought I knew everything about this parish, especially coming up in the household of an educator. But I found out, and working with the Tourist Commission and some other venues, that there's a lot that I still don't know about St. Tammany Parish. And so President Bristol and the rest of us, we were extended an invitation several months ago, to attend a dedication ceremony at Fontainebleau State Park. And by the time I finished going down through the litany of my emails, I saw the invitation, but the date had already expired. And I read it, and I said, oh, my God, I missed this wonderful opportunity to make this dedication ceremony in Fontainebleau State Park. And on the invitation, though, there was a picture of this young man and the work and the research that he had done and as a part of that dedication ceremony. And I was so taken aback by the information and the research paper that I texted him. And I apologized, and I told him, I'm sorry I missed his ceremony, but I want to know more about his research. So he sent me the link. And as I drilled down in it, it really, really, really resounded with me. And so I asked him if I could, get with him later on and have some more dialogue with him about it. And he's here with us tonight. Jackson Cantrell, a resident of Mandeville. I think he lives in your district, Mr. Chairman. But anyway, I wanted to recognize him for the work that he has done with this research paper as an Eagle Scout candidate. And that's another thing I ain't know anything about, Boy Scouts and all that, but I did a little research, and that's the next step before you get to the top. And so Jackson is on his way to accomplishing some great things in that venue and some more. But education in this parish, as we all know, is one of the hallmarks of our community. And I want to applaud all of those who have helped us to attain that. We have a former school board member here with us tonight, Ms. Belisario, and I don't know any others in the audience, teachers and whatever. But there's one lady that I'd like to publicly highlight tonight, and I know she's sitting at home looking, a retired school teacher named Miss Ruth Harrison Butler. And I promised her that I would give her a shout out tonight at this time, so thank you for indulging me. But at this point, we'd like to make this certificate of recognition to Mr. Cantrell, and we'd like to ask all of those who accepted my invitation to come and help me in this recognition to stand while we do so. St. Tammany Parish Council would like to present this certificate of recognition to Jackson Cantrell. The parish council desires to acknowledge the youth of this parish for their positive achievements and accomplishments. In particular, those who choose to remain in school, participate in their religious convictions, are morally and community conscious, and actively pursue productive lifestyles. The parish council, along with our parish president, is proud to recognize a young man who has not been overcome by negative peer pressure, one who knows that perseverance and commitment can achieve goals. A young man who is an active member of the Boy Scouts of America Troop 119, Estruma Area Council. Jackson has completed a project which entailed placing markers dedicated to the memory of the enslaved people who once lived at Fontainebleau Plantation, which is now Fontainebleau State Park in St. Tammany Parish. In his research, Jackson was able to discover 153 names of Bernard D. Maroney's slaves who lived at Fontainebleau Plantation during the mid-1830s. One marker is dedicated in memory of the skilled labor. And I'll read that again. One marker is dedicated in memory of the skilled labor provided by the slave families that enhanced the landscape infrastructure of St. Tammany Parish. The other is dedicated in memory of the native people who occupied the land in that area for thousands of years. The parish council recognizes Jackson Cantrell. Congratulations. Mr. Chairman, I think he has a presentation he'd like to make.
Yes, sir. We'll take his, Mr. Smith, we'll take his picture first, and then we'll do that.
Pardon?
Take his
Okay.
picture first, and we'll do that.
Jack?
You know, Jackson, before you get started, sir, I had the privilege of meeting you about 4 years ago, right before I came on the council. You were a little bit smaller then.
Yes, sir.
But your drive and your initiative is even stronger than the day that we sat in a coffee shop and talked about what goes on in political government. And there's no doubt in my mind that one day that I'll be sitting out there and I won't be surprised if you're not up here or even in Baton Rouge or even in Washington, because that's your drive, and I know that. So I just wanted to say that, and thank you very much, and please go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Give me a second to prepare my stuff real quick. Before I start my presentation, I'd like to thank the council for giving me this opportunity, as well as Madam President and Mr. T.J. Smith for bringing me up here. And I'd like to thank all of you behind me for your interest in a little studied part of our area. And before we can understand the role of the enslaved at what is now Fontainebleau State Park, it is important to consider the setting in which they lived. On this 1848 map, thank you, Mr. Smith. On this 1848 map by La Tourette, take a glance at all the plantations along the Mississippi. Selling indigo, sugar, or cotton along the river was simple. So one might wonder as to why, on that little star right there, of Fontainebleau's isolated location, across from Lake Pontchartrain from the city of New Orleans, Fontainebleau's placement meant that transport by boat for both the goods produced there and for visitors visiting there was important. The site also needed to be self-sufficient. We know that the geography of the Fontainebleau plantation was a bit unusual, but there were some unique aspects. Many of the stories about the beautiful grounds explain that it was set up to be a luxury getaway and a gigantic hunting ground for the well-to-do Bernard de Marigny. While that is true, the primary role of Fontainebleau was to function as an industrial park. The biggest profits came not from sugar, but rather from brickmaking and timber. It was an investment that, at the time, seemed sure to succeed. Customers for his bricks and lumber were right next door. And in 1829, when Marigny bought the properties for the Fontainebleau complex, he had already purchased his first section of land for a resort town. That town would become known as Mandeville. It took him 3 years to acquire all the land for the town, but by then he had a large enslaved workforce on the North Shore, right next door at Fontainebleau, who could clear land. He had bricks, lumber, and very talented workers, again the enslaved, for the new residents to access for building their homes. Enslaved workers were hired out as master carpenters, masons, joiners, and master craftsmen. Yet another way to turn a profit. Whatever his numerous faults, Bernard de Marigny de Mandeville was an ingenious businessman. As we look to the contributions of his enslaved workforce, we need to understand the unique area where they were to work and to be quartered. Many of us have heard stories of how successful the development of the town of Mandeville was back in 1834, but most don't realize that disaster had a role in bringing not just new residents, but enslaved workers to the area. In the early 1800s, Marigny had great success subdividing his old family plantation in New Orleans into the Faubourg Marigny. Real estate development worked for him before, so it is no wonder he took that concept to the north shore of the lake. The pine forests, clean running bayous to say the least, lake breezes, and free passage via Marigny's steamship Black Hawk made it a great getaway for city dwellers. Bernard was a middle-aged father of 7 when he bought his first parcel on the North Shore in 1829. During the years it took to acquire the land for his resort town, New Orleans residents started looking for an escape from the city. The Great Barbados Hurricane that made landfall in Louisiana flooded many parts of New Orleans in 1831. And while yellow fever was an epidemic every summer practically, there was a nationwide outbreak of cholera that started in October of 1832. Newspapers covered the year-long spread of the virus. By October 27th of 1833, the disease was found in New Orleans. Within the first 10 days, 1 person out of every 10 was dead. Death rates were 500 per day. 4 months later, when Bernard put up lots for sale in Mandeville, it is no wonder that he made $80,000 in 3 single days, which in today's money is the equivalent of $3 million. New Orleans city dwellers desperately needed to escape. Although there were a few slaveholders on the North Shore who also had brickworks and sawmills, Bernard could operate as one-stop shopping, to say the least, for those buying lots and looking to build vacation homes quickly. Mandeville was built by the enslaved. But before the town could be built, Marigny had to get his Fontainebleau enterprise rolling. He needed a large workforce, the enslaved again, and in 1840, the census tells us that 153 people were in bondage at the site. The work that they performed, even before the town was going up, was nonstop and demanding. In addition to clearing land, a brickworks and an industrial canal were immediately needed. Bernard knew from previous developments that the industrial complex could not be built close to the lake because of risk of flooding, and he had his civil engineers, again the enslaved, build the complex where we see its ruins today, but also design an industrial canal connecting the mill to the lake. Barges of brick, lumber, and sugar could be floated down to the lake by ox teams on either side of the canal. If you've crossed the little bridge at Fontainebleau while heading out to the boardwalk, then you've seen the very same canal that was built 190 years ago. After the brickyard and canal, a sawmill was next. Bernard owned a delivery schooner and had set up steamship service for visitors, as I've already mentioned, and obviously those required a wooden wharf on the lakefront. Again, everything was designed and built by the enslaved. Slave quarters and the sugar mill came next. Clay had to be dug and hauled to make bricks, timber had to be felled, sugar crops, vegetable gardens, orchards, livestock pens, kitchens, and more were needed to feed not just Bernard's visitors, but the 153 enslaved. We know the number of people from the census, but we must look harder to find out who they were. Bernard's son, Armand, gave us those clues. When Bernard assigned his youngest son, Armand, to live at and run Fontainebleau, Armand's attention to detail turned out to have great historic meaning. He took the time to indicate the number of men who were the most valuable to the operation, including 10 men listed as navigators. We know from letters and sales documents that the delivery schooner Faray was purchased by Marion in 1832. Fontainebleau's bricks, lumber, and sugar were transported by this ship across the lake, then sailed down the Marion Canal to deliver his goods at the docks on the Mississippi River. This delivery ship was crewed entirely by a group of 10 enslaved mariners. Although there are hints of this fact in letters, the proof came from Armand's detailed census entry. While there are a handful of articles out there that mention other crews of enslaved mariners, these men were entrusted to sail back and forth for 20 or more years, and that is incredible. Armand did document the role of the 10 mariners, but to get the actual names of the two pilots, Valerie and Ned, we must go to the mortgage records. Ned and Valerie were listed with the last name of Golette on banking records, but they were not brothers. Golette means schooner in French, and their word was their title. Valerie was half Native American as well, but why were their names listed on a mortgage? Starting in 1837, there was an economic disaster that hit the country and continued for 14 years. Due to these financial events, many property holders began mortgaging their businesses to pull out cash in order to put out operating costs. Because most of a landowner's wealth back then was unfortunately in the value of his enslaved workers, when hard times required a planter to mortgage his property, the slaves themselves were put up as collateral on the loans. Banks insisted on each slave being listed by name and age. The most valuable workers had their job titles listed. In the instance where a bank had to foreclose and seize their property, they needed to have each person differentiated by his or her skills, and therefore monetary value. For example, someone who's a 35-year-old schooner pilot may have been worth 10 times the amount of a 35-year-old field hand. If the bank didn't know their names, the landowner could switch them out and keep the more valuable person to himself. As a researcher, it was sobering to learn the names of all 153 enslaved, but it was more so to see 57 children and infants listed as assets. We all understand the concept of chattel slavery, and if not, I hope. But to see infants put up as collateral on a loan is still a shock. Banks preferred groups of enslaved to put up for collateral instead of just a few individuals in the event of illness, injury, death, or just aging of one or two valuable slaves. Banks could spread their risk with a group, similar to investing in a mutual fund. These plantation banks also sold bonds, and northern investors and banks bought into them. The enslaved families at Fontainebleau were mortgaged 6 times, and bonds by investors kept foreclosure at bay. From the hints on the 1840 census and mortgages, we can get insights into the daily lives of some of the men. But finding specifics about the women and children is more difficult. Other than roles as valuable seamstresses and nursery maids, only general information is available. Women were key harvesters for the tall sugar cane, while the men loaded and offloaded carts. New crops had to be planted right after harvest, then weeded every 2 months. The 57 boys and girls who were on the 1840 census had childhoods very different from ours, to say the least. Their roles were not in just tending animals and crops, but during the 4 months of harvest and sugar refining, their small hands and arms were ideal for feeding sugar cane into the steam-operated presses. This was incredibly dangerous work, and you can understand why a hospital was kept on the grounds. Secondly, after boys and girls reached the age of 10, the law no longer guaranteed that they would stay with their mothers. In Louisiana, there was a law that prohibited selling children under the age of 10 away from their mothers, but after that birthday, the child could be sold individually. While the idea of a 10-year-old being sold off is horrific, in most states, that age was 5. For a 6-year-old to stay with his or her mother was a privilege in that time period. Thankfully, Marigny was known to keep whole families together, including the fathers and the older siblings. But as the economic crisis deepened and he was forced to sell Fontainebleau, all bets were off. After 190 years, there is still more that remains at Fontainebleau than what is easily seen. The ruins of the sugar mill are obvious. As is the industrial canal. Archaeology reports, however, show that there were at least 50 separate buildings throughout the park, stretching all the way from the beach to the sugar mill ruins. Their foundations are buried deep beneath 200 years of sediment, but they remain. Of special note is that the beach area, which is where the wharf for the schooner Foray and the steamship Blackhawk were berthed, the schooner crew that was there, led by Ned and Valerie, the half-native man, is a unique part of slave history. That 10 enslaved men sailed from this spot for decades is incredibly special. Before I knew anything about the schooner, or much at all about Bernard Marigny, what first inspired me to research the enslaved families is what lies beneath the Alley of Oaks. If you walk beneath those enormous trees, you can spy the very bricks that were once part of the slave quarters. It was those chimney brick hearths that pulled me into Fontainebleau's history. The Oak Alley is where 40 families once lived, and whose trees were planted to shade them from the hot Louisiana sun. I hope you'll remember these children and their parents the next time you make your way out to the park. The historical marker located at the Alley of Oaks is there to commemorate the lives of those who were less fortunate than us, those who endured something that we can't quite possibly understand. Fontainebleau and that marker shall be their legacy. It shall tell their story. Slavery is an uncomfortable topic, to say the least, but it is important to remember all our history, because if we don't, the mistakes made in the past may just come back to haunt us in the future. When finances become more important than humanity, and when the norms of today's world lead us on a dark path, it is these stories from our past that can remind us of what is right. Once more, I'd like to thank the council and each of the people who have brought me up here for their time tonight, as well as the audience for listening to me ramble on. And if you would like to visit the historical marker, please do so. Thank you.
And as we part, I'd like to recognize Jackson's mother, who's here with him tonight, and his father, and yeah. And also, for your information, Jackson's research paper can be found at the Amercia Museum in New Orleans, and also at our St. Tammany Parish libraries. And also, I understand that there are some national entities, collegiate entities, who are interested in his work as well. So this information and this research is gone beyond the shores of just St. Tammany Parish. Thank you again, Jackson, and thank you for indulging us.
Thank you again, Jackson. Thank you very much. Okay. I'd like to ask for a point of personal privilege and ask Fire District Number 11 to come up and give a presentation to the family of Mr. Johnny Leos, please.
If you don't mind, sir, I'd like to introduce Chief Russell DeSalvo. He is the president of the Louisiana State Fire Chiefs Association, and he will be the one presenting the award tonight.
That's fine. Thank you, sir. Please go ahead, Chief.
I'd like to thank you for the privilege of doing this. Each year, the State Fire Chiefs Association recognizes those that have passed, that have led the fire service. I'm honored today to present on behalf of the fire service in in St. Tammany Parish, and on behalf of Fire District 11 to the family, a small token of our appreciation for the dedication of Fire Chief Donnie Leos.
Okay. Chief, would the family just stay there? I think Mr. Balisaro wants to say something. Gene?
Thank you. I wanted the Leos family to know that I was pleased when Fire Chief Leos became the fire chief for Fire District 11. When he came in, he had a considerable workload to do to turn the ship around and get it going in the right direction, and he did an awesome job, so I wanted you to know that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll go to the appointments. Appointment number 1, resolution to appoint a new member to replace Martha Casabon, who resigned on the Board of Commissioners for the Parish Planning and Zoning Commission. This is a parish-wide seat. We did have 2 candidates. One has withdrawn, so we only have 1 candidate, Ms. Christy R. Thomas. Is that it? Oh, no, I'm sorry. Mr. Thomas Tom Seeger. That's who we'll be nominating. Is there a motion to do that? Motion by Mr. Groby.
Second.
Second by Mr. Balisaro. Or do we need to vote on this? Okay. If you hit that little button right there, it'll pop up every time. But anyway, go ahead, Mr. Tanner.
Motion by Mr. Fitzgerald, seconded by Richard Tanner.
Gotcha. All in favor, please. Got it.
Motion is unanimous, none absent.
Thank you. Number 2, resolution to appoint Andrew Menheim to replace Peter Canzero, resigned on the Board of Commissioners for District Number 12, District 3. Mr. Thompson. Motion by Mr. Thompson, second by Mr. Tanner. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Thank you. Number 3, resolution to appoint Wilton Jerry Smith Jr. to replace George Larry O'Berry, deceased, on the Board of Commissioners for Fire Protection District Number 7, District 6, 7, and 11. Mr. Tanner? Motion by Mr. Tanner, second by Mr. Stefanczyk. Staff?
Okay,
Yes,
there we
ma'am.
go. Unless I missed it, you'll need to go back to suspend the rules to appoint your planning and zoning commissioner, because it's a parish-wide appointment,
Okay. This one?
unless
Okay.
you want it to lay over.
Okay, we can go back and do that right after this vote. Go ahead and please vote.
We have to vote. We have to call it. Okay.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Thank you. We'll go back to number 1 on the appointment of Mr. Seeger. We need to go ahead and suspend the rules to appoint, which requires 10 votes. Motion by Mr. Tanner, second by Mr. Fitzgerald. Please vote. You can hit it for me.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Okay, number 4, resolution to reappoint Alicia Amercia to the Board of Commissioners for Hospital Service District Number 2, Permanent Nominating Committee, Slidell Memorial Hospital, District 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 12, 13, and 14.
So moved.
Balisaro.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Balisaro, second by Mr. Canulette. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Okay, we'll go to the consent calendar. Items to be pulled. Number 1, ordinance for introduction, ordinance number 6194. Ordinance for introduction number 9, ordinance 6220. Resolutions. Resolution number 1, C-6142. Resolution number 7, C-6148. Mr. Dean, do you have anything? Mr. Fitzgerald? Mr. Thompson? Mr. Toledano?
No, thank you.
Mr. Tanner?
No, sir.
Mr. Balisaro?
No, sir.
Mr. Grobe?
Yes, sir. Resolution number 9, C 6150.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Mr. Canulette?
No, sir.
Mr. O'Brien?
No, sir.
Mr.
Nope.
Stavansky? Mr. Bender?
No, sir.
Ms. Blanchard?
No, sir.
Mr. Smith? Okay. All righty. Any items not pulled from the consent calendar automatically approved in whole by one vote? Items pulled from the consent calendar are discussed and voted upon individually. A majority of the entire council, 8 votes, is required to adopt the consent calendar. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Balisaro. Second by Mr. Toledano. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Thank you. Number 1, ordinance calendar number 6194, ordinance to amend the precinct boundary legal description within St. Tammany Parish to comply with the Louisiana Secretary of State's office regulation. This is remove from the calendar.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Balisaro, second by Mr. Tanner. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Number 9, ordinance calendar number 6220, ordinance amending the official planning parish zoning map to reclassify 0.61 acres from A-2 to A-2N and MHO, Ward 3, District 2. Mr. Fitzgerald?
Yes, I think, is there a card there for that
Yep,
one?
yes, sir.
That'd be fine, Mr.
Mr. David Nottingham? Yes, sir. Nottingham? I still need a motion, Mr. Fitzgerald. Second? Second by Mr. Thompson.
Hi, good afternoon, Council.
Good evening, sir.
I'm here to oppose the approval of the Planning and Zoning's recommendation to approve a house trailer on that site. It currently is not zoned for house trailers, and has none within a 4-block radius of it. And I own the property across the street. From my understanding, Mr. Fitzgerald told me that the owner would occupy the trailer, but I see, hey, I did some research, and he has a homestead exemption on a home on Arthur Road and some multiple other properties that he owns. My fear, this is going to become a cheap rental. And, you know, about a year ago, the same owner allowed someone to pull a travel trailer on it, unpermitted, and it took me about 3 months with the code enforcement to have it removed because it had no power or sewer going to the trailer. So I just think it's going to end up in the same position that we were a year and a half ago. And also, they denied another person about 2 years ago, directly across the street from me, from putting a trailer. And I think it's just going to set a bad precedence for inviting new trailers in the area. I think it was a mistake on the zoning's behalf to make a motion to approve for the trailer to be there. They are building new homes in the area. There's 3 new ones facing the trace on Mill Road, and there's one being built on a corner of Ohio by Velvet Pines. So that's my position, and I hope you vote to oppose it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Fitzgerald?
Thank you, David, for coming in. And myself and Mr. Nargarath have talked about this on a number of occasions and have kind of respectfully agreed to disagree. It's routine to allow the Planning and Zoning Commission to take a look at, as we know, the area, the setting, the property, and come up with the best and reasonable use for the property. They saw that based on the factors concerning that lot, that they felt like it was a reasonable use for it. And I've talked with the owner. Dave and I just have a different view on what's going to ultimately end up with the property. I'm going to go back with him. I think we can go in and introduce this, and of course, it's not going to come up for final approval until 30 days from now, so we can continue this discussion, but I think we should concur.
Thank you. Seeing no one else in the queue?
This is just an introduction.
Okay.
It is.
This introduction, okay. Thank you.
You don't have to.
Did you? No. Okay. All right.
No.
Yeah, that's what I said, Mr. Fitzgerald and Mr. Thompson. We already had it, right? We already had it in the beginning. We already had it in the beginning, right? Thank you.
Okay.
Resolutions. Resolution number 1, CS number C-6142, resolution to concur, not concur with Slidell annexation and rezoning of 0.275 acres from Parish HC-2 to Slidell C-4, Ward 8, District 13. Ms. Blanchard?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Blanchard.
To concur?
Yes.
Yes. Second by Mr. Canulet. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Number 7, CS-number C-6148, resolution to concur and not concur with Slidell annexation and rezoning of 0.995 acres from Parish HC-2 to Slidell C-4, Ward 8, District 14. Mr. Smith.
We move to concur, Mr. Chairman.
Motion by Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Canulet to concur. Please vote.
Mr. Stefanczyk? Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Thank you. Number 9, Resolution CS number C-6150, resolution to amend ordinance CS number 18-3977 to make changes to the 2019 capital improvement budget and capital assets. Mr. Groby.
Thank you, Chair. This isn't any objection or anything to this, and I absolutely support the upgrades to the waste treatment plant, no question. What I wanted to point out was that I would ask the administration to please, for next month, consider a budget amendment to the cross gates and the Willowwood Well complex to upgrade the chlorine monitoring and a rudimentary SCADA system. As we know, last month we had an overfeed at one well and no feed at another. Tim's team jumped right on it. It's not a complaint. I mean, his men were out there till 3 in the morning flushing the mains and getting the chlorine out the system. What I'd like to do is see if we could get some kind of a chlorine monitor system in place and not that expensive, and a baseline SCADA system, at least for that area right now. Start small, ramp up. His men basically relied on customer complaint calls, and we can do better. So if it's within the budget, I'm asking the administration to see if they can make a budget amendment to purchase that equipment and get that one worry off of our back. Thank you.
Administration.
Mr. Groby, and I think you had mentioned that before, and we are looking at it. So thank you for your comments.
Thank you. Mr. Groby, you make that motion? Motion by Mr. Groby, second by Mr. Canulette. Please vote.
Mr. Toledano, did you mean to vote yes? You must have hit your button again. Okay, you can't change it now. Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Thank you. We'll go to the appeals. Speaking time per side is 10 minutes, 3 minutes rebuttal, 2 minutes conclusion. Number 1, Robert Troncoso, appealing the Zoning Commission approval on May 7, 2019 to rezone 28.9 acres west of Highway 59, S25, T7S, R11E from A-1 Suburban District to A-4 Single Family Residential District, Ward 4, District 5. Petitioner, Mr. Marone, on behalf of D-Val Incorporated. Mr. Toledano.
Reno, thank you very much. My comments are peculiar to items on appeal as items number 1 and 2. I've been working with the various parties in interest in that. It's a work in progress, and it's a very complicated case. I'm going to move to postpone item number 1 for 3 months.
Motion by Mr. Toledano, second by Mr. Canulette. Before we vote, we have one person that wishes to speak. Ms. 2? Okay, I'm sorry. Shannon Doran? Yeah. That's not the case. Ms. Stevens, is that yours? No. No, that's not the case. Thank you, man.
Gee whiz.
Okay. We have no one to speak. Motion by Mr. Toledano, second by Mr. Canulette. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Number 2, Robert Troncoso, appealing the Zoning Commission approval on May 7, 2019 to rezone 70.9 acres west of Highway 59, south of Dove Park Road from A-1 Suburban District to A-4 Single Family Residential District, PUD Plan Unit Development Overlay, and major amendment to the PUD Plan Unit Overlay, Ward 4, District 5. Mr. Toledano.
Mr. Reno, thank you again. As I mentioned, items number 1 and 2 are related. I've been working diligently on both of these. it also will require postponement. I'm asked the court, the group to consider a 3-month postponement, so I so move.
Motion by Mr. Toledano, second by Mr. Thompson. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Number 3, Anita Charles Yarborough, Mary Casper, Christian Fleming, and Joseph Pizzuto appealing the zoning commission approval on June 4, 2019 to rezone 2.5 acres south of West Power Line Road, west of Highway 41, being 37190 West Power Line Road from A-2 Suburban District to A-2 Single Family Residential and MHO Manufactured Housing Overlay, Ward 8, District 9. Mr. Balisaro.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I would just want to confirm that there's nobody here for this particular case. All right, I'd like a motion to postpone for 1 month. I've been working with the staff on what needs to be done to move this case forward. We need time to work with LDH.
Okay. Motion by Mr. Balisaro, second by Mr. Canulette. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Number 4, Shenandoah Varone appealing the zoning commission denial on July 2nd, 2019 to rezone 4.325 acres located north of Davis Drive, east of Saunders Road and Downs Avenue from A-1A Suburban District to A-2 Suburban District and MHO Manufactured Housing Overlay, Ward 10, District 6. Mr. Tanner. Yes, sir. You want to go to them first, Rich? Okay. Mr. Sharon, there you go. Yes, sir. Come on. Got it.
All right. I would like to.
Your name, please?
Yes.
My name is Shenandoah Varone. Yes. My mother had given me this land, and I have my sister staying on it, and I would like to put a manufacturer home on it. And then my mother's getting old, so when her husband passes away, I would like to put something on there for her, and that would be it. I'm not making no trailer park, and I'm not making people's land depreciate. And if they're worried about that, they should have moved to subdivision. And that's really all I have to say.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Herman Davis. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Please state your name, please, sir.
Herman Davis. Just want to get by what I got out there. You know, I ain't got much, but I know I'm willing to do whatever they want to.
Okay.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Miss Eileen Munger. Give her 3 minutes. Stop and start over. Miss Eileen, please state your name, please.
Eileen Munger. I'm Shenandoah's mother. The people in the back has a mobile home on their place. Son of the mighty great Steve owns a mobile home at the end of the road. So everybody's on mobile homes. You know, we're just trying to get a place to live. Okay, sir, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Anybody else?
Lee Robin?
This is for the rebuttal, right?
Yes, sir.
Good evening, my name's Lee Robin. I reside back there at 25180 S. Davis Road. I'm neighbors to Herman back there as well. And, well, first of all, you know, August of 2005, Hurricane Katrina, you know, hit the south coast of Louisiana. And here we are upcoming the celebration of 14 years, correct? So I've resided back there for the last 13 years. And the reason why I invested back there is because I fell in love with the area, right? Depreciation or not, like the gentleman just said, we should have moved into a subdivision. I think we're trying to appreciate the entire parish, not just a subdivision or a piece of property, correct? And so with that being said, I've been doing nothing but investing back there. And like Ms. Tina said, she is accurate. There is a mobile manufactured home back there on the property, but that was back there when I purchased the property back 13 years ago. My in-laws, since then, we share that property, and we've upgraded from that mobile manufactured home and just built our forever homes back there. My neighbor to the south side, southeast side of that property would be Mr. Pace, who recently acquired the additional property from Mr. Herman Davis and Miss Tina's, you know, deceased sister. And yes, there is a manufactured home there, but that was there on the property as well when he acquired it. You know, so I know he has intention on upgrading the whole area as a whole, myself included. So, you know, that's all I want to say real quick. I just want to continue to enhance the parish, not just subdivision, rural property, and whatnot. And I don't want to absorb any of Mr. Pace's time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Ms. Talbot?
Mr. Adam Christopace?
My name's Adam Pace. I personally own 12 acres adjoining the property. You know, I grew up out in Waldheim, and my dad still lives out there, and myself, my brother, and my sisters, we still own property out there. We've been great neighbors with the Davis family for 45 years. And so, you know, our families, we've always done a good job, and we've always been great neighbors. But unfortunately, we are against a zoning change in the area. We're against the spot zoning, anything that's that will increase the zoning density in this area. We're also against any spot overlays. We appreciate and count on the current zoning that's in the area. We've recently purchased additional property in the area and have paid a premium for. We want the current zoning that's in place. We feel it's appropriate, especially for a rural area. We have no issues with the current trailers that are already on the property. That's not an issue for us. We understand, you know, the parish rezoned and did comprehensive rezoning, and they put new rules in place. So you can't fault anybody or any property for already having what it was already on there. So we're not asking anyone to change anything. But we are taking issue with this spot zoning and increasing the density in the area. And as well as having an overlay for the precedent that it sets in the area. So we're asking the council to reject the appeal of the zoning change and as well as the housing overlay, and in agreement with the planning and zoning. So we are against this zoning. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. William Oresti?
Good evening, William Hurstel. I do live in the back part of the property that they are talking about. We have two homes back there. My son-in-law was speaking earlier, and I took some pictures of our property that I would like to pass around. My property tax is over $2,000 a year, so we do have a nice investment back there. I'm kind of pulling against the idea of putting modular homes, because I know the original request was putting like 4 trailers there, and I'm definitely against something on that viewpoint. If they wish to put just one property, one module, whatever's approved by the parish to be put there on the land, they do have a trailer there at this time, which I would hope they would keep it up a little bit better. And I do have some pictures of the trailer and all, but if they keep it up and that's their property, and I can't disagree with what y'all would agree to originally, but to put 4 trailers there would be against my approval due to the fact that, we do have nice homes back there that I'm sending pictures around. So I do appreciate any consideration that y'all have on this viewpoint. And anything else y'all have a question on?
No, sir.
I do thank you.
Mr. Groby?
How
Sure.
big of a piece of property we talking about the 4 trailers to sit on? Is it 10 acres, 5 acres? I don't know how big it is.
You're talking about the request there?
Correct.
They like 4.5 acres total, and
So-
they do have our property is, I have 8.5 acres. My son-in-law has 8.5 acres, and we have one house on each of ours. We do have a trailer on there that he's going to be selling shortly. He's trying to sell it. We were all living in the trailer when we first moved to the property. It was a big double-wide trailer, which is a beautiful home, really. But we built 2 beautiful houses there, which I know the property tax is very high on them, that we are, paying a premium on that viewpoint. Their property, I believe, is a little over 4 acres that they wish to put a home on, which I can't object to that because that's what's approvable by you all.
Okay. Are y'all putting one mobile home per acre on this property?
No, that's the wrong, excuse me, sir,
Can you
he's,
come up to the mic? I can't hear you.
you'll have a chance to come up when the other side comes back up. Go
The
ahead, sir.
original zoning that they were requested was going to have 4 modular homes on it, or 4 trailers on them, and that's what I'm objecting to. Now, what he's proposing now is a different ordinance change. I don't know if he even needs a change if he's only putting one home on it. So, but I'm objecting to 4 trailers on their property. That's what my objection is.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll have, would you come on up now? We'll have a 3-minute rebuttal. And you can go ahead and talk about anything that you
Yes,
want
sir.
to
Yes,
talk
sir.
about that was said, please.
Yeah, at the beginning, I think they have on here is A2 Suburban District, is that right? For, I think it's 1 home per acre. And the reason why I went with that at first is, like I said, I'm not trying to put 4 trailers on there. I'm just my sister has one on there already, and I will get that cleaned up and get the land looking good once I get there. But I wanted to put a modular home, and then I wanted, when my mom's husband dies, I was gonna try and put something over there for her. But if that doesn't work out, it says the staff recommends that I do a MHO, a manufacturing housing overlay. That would work out fine for just 1 home, but in 10 years, it's 10 or 5 years from now, I don't know when Mr. Frank's gonna pass away, but my mother's getting ill too, and she needs to be with my sister and I. And that's the reason why we were trying to do the A2 for a home per acre. And that's what I was trying to do. I'm not trying to put 4 trailers on there.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Would anyone else yes, ma'am. Do you have a card in? You have to have a card in, that's right. Would anyone from the other side like to come up and rebut what was just said? Mr. Christopace? Yeah.
All I'd like to say is the property is just over 4 acres, and it's not zoned to put more than one residence on the property. There is currently a residence on the property, and all I'm asking is for the parish to maintain the current zoning that's in place, as opposed to besides, there's also a pond in the middle of the property and another in a right of way for my neighbors that goes to the property. So there's really not a lot of space on there. there's barely enough to put what's on there now. And you know, I hate to oppose something that somebody needs to do, but the thing is that it's an inappropriate zoning for this particular area. Thank you.
Sir, you still have some time up. Would you like to say anything?
Once again, Lee Robin, 25180 S. Davis Road. And like Mr. Equistapace said, we've been great neighbors since day one, since we've been back there. And, you know, unfortunately, I don't have any reason to believe that, I mean, you can see clearly from the pictures, right? It's what we see day in and day out, you know? And I think Mr. Equistapace and I have spoken once or twice before on the matter, and we're not asking them to remove what's currently in place. We're not even asking them to clean up what's currently in place. We just don't want any more of what's currently in place, and I think that's fair enough. And with that being said, Mr. Herman, when he came up here and he spoke his piece, and he said that, you know, he'd be willing to do whatever it takes back there. Now, on what side is that? Is that our side or their side? Because I think, you know, and I hate to even go this route, but since we are here, if you take a ride yourself back there, you'll see that there's a number of violations, you know, that I haven't reported, you know, and that's my own fault for not having reported it, but that in itself is an eyesore for me. But I try to be gentle with them, try to be, you know, humane, if you will, and this is where it's brought us today, you know, so that's all I ask. Just take that into consideration, and once again, thank each and every one of you for your time.
Thank you. Okay. Ms. Sherry, we're going to go to the 2-minute conclusion now. Ms. Sherry, did you want to say something on concluding on this side of it?
My name is Sherry Israel.
What side are you speaking?
I'm Shannon Dora's fiance, and I would like to request that you approve the manufactured home overlay, because we want to move our family from Mandeville to the country and be able to raise our family on the land, just like they started in their mobile home and built up their land. That's what we're trying to do as well. And as far as the current trailer or the current way that the land is, if we were on the property, we would be there. His sister is a single mom, so with our family there, we would be able to keep the land up, you know, do things like that that isn't maybe currently what they're saying is not happening, but we would be able to take care of it a lot easier if we were there on the property as opposed to not even being there right now. So, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We have 2 minutes left on the other side. Mr. Equistapace, if someone wants to close, or you all are fine? Okay. Seeing no one?
I'm sorry, once again, Lee Robin. My oldest one's here with me today, advising me to go ahead and continue to speak whatever I can say. But like I said, for the last 13 years, and like I told you, if you take a ride back there, you can see the simplicity of the violations that are being made. You know, I've asked them numerous accounts, numerous times to just merely keep up your dogs, right? And my daughter, you know, years back, she was bitten. And it was an ordeal, and if you go into your public records, you can easily see it's there. It's in a record book. And I did everything legal. I did the process. Despite how I wanted to react, I didn't. But I could sit here and we can go for the next 10 minutes, and I can just give you a list of numerous accounts and infractions here and there that we've had to undergo since we've been back there. And like I said, I just don't want any more of it. That's all. Thank you again.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Seeing no one else. Mr. Tanner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, I have looked at this for 5-6 weeks now, and I understand the people who are wanting to rezone and to change the zoning to a mobile home overlay. I don't think that's appropriate for that area now as it's starting to grow. And, you know, I can tell you that land out there is selling for $20,000 an acre. So, you know, you don't put mobile homes on a $20,000 piece of property. I moved to to approve the denial of the zoning commission.
Motion by Mr. Tanner, second by Mr. Thompson. Please vote.
Mr. Smith? Motion passes 13 yeas, 1 nay, no one absent.
Thank you. We need a resolution. Mr. Tanner? Motion by Mr. Tanner, second by Mr. Thompson. Please vote.
Motion passes 13 yeas, 1 nay, no one absent.
Number 5, David Robotham, representing Trailwood Civic Association, Shelby Faherty, Terry Tilclair, Teresa Danube, et al., appealing the Planning Commission approval and waiver of July 9th, 2019 preliminary subdivision review of Cooper Ridge LLC, located at the end of Hazel Drive, north of Montmartre Street, Mandeville, Ward 4, District 7. Yeah. Mr. Groby.
Mr. Chair, we have a situation tonight where as I understand it, the majority of the appellants are withdrawing, but not all of them have formally withdrawn, so you're going to have to go through and call each one? To see if
Yes, sir.
they're
Yes, sir.
going to withdraw or
Yes,
not.
sir. You want me to do that now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Terrell Trisclair, Calet. Teresa Danube, Irving and Andre Leon, Jason Gilbert, Julianne Ross Men, Diane Mardell, Amy and Mark Evan, Scott and Christina Oakley. None of those are here, but we do have one card, Mr. Grover.
Go ahead.
Where'd you go? Mr. Morone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Paul Morone on behalf of the applicant. I just wanted to thank Mr. Groby for his efforts. We, as you saw, we had a number of people that were concerned after the approval of the project at the Planning Commission. He helped facilitate a meeting with Trailwood, with some of their representatives. We had a very productive meeting, which led to finding some common ground on some of the issues that they had. I issued a letter to Mr. Robotham, who's their president, on July 30th, laying out some of the concessions that we were willing to commit to. And as a result of that, they attempted to withdraw their appeals, but there were so many that, in fairness, they weren't able to reach everybody. Again, thank Mr. Groby for his efforts to put us together. I did also want to note there are some residents here from Maroney Trace, which is on the other side of us. Before meeting with Trailwood, we had an opportunity to meet with the members of Maroney Trace about some of their issues as it relates to that boundary. And I just wanted to confirm for them today on the record that the commitments that we made to them at the Planning Commission and that are also memorialized in a letter to Mr. Lesh, who is here, all of those commitments stand. None of those have been modified or changed in any way. The commitments to Trailwood are unique to the Trailwood side. Everything we agreed to do with Maroney Trace will remain on the plan and will be set forth in my letter. So with that said, we would respectfully request concurrence of the approval by the Planning Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Groby.
I'm going to move to concur with the approval, Chair.
Motion by Mr. Groby. Second? Second by Mr. Canulet. Please vote.
Mr. Bender, did you hit your button again? Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
I need a resolution again.
Second.
Mr. Groby makes the motion, the resolution. Mr. Canulet, second. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Thank you. We'll go to ordinances for adoption. Ordinance calendar number 6066AA. Ordinance to amend section 11-3 of the Parish Code of Ordinance relative to fill mitigation. This is to reintroduce the ordinance. This is to reintroduce the ordinance. Mr. Taladano?
Thank you, Mr. Moreno. Specifically, this amendment, by way of reintroduction, 115-3B, Section 5, small f. And basically, the language in Section F changes what was heretofore the statement of may as it relates to storage capacity to meet fill mitigation requirements. It is now changed by way of this amendment, and I move for the introduction to read shall not. Seconded by Mr. Fitzgerald. Mr. Lorino. He left.
So we only have one.
I'm gonna move to postpone this other ordinance.
Okay.
I think it
Thank
is
you.
gonna be postponed.
I'm sorry, Mr. Taladano, they were talking to me.
For the record, I made note of the amendment, and those amendments carried forth in section 115-3, small section B, 6I, and the same language, which constitutes an amendment to the original ordinance, is offered as an amendment and reads shall not.
Yes, sir. You have to speak into the mic a little bit.
I didn't have it on.
He didn't have it on, I'm sorry.
I could hear myself clearly. But again, for the record, this is an amendment to the ordinance, as Mr. Lorino called out, and it amends sections 115-3B, 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 reading as section 7E, 6I, 5F, 7E, and 9F. In each case, the language that was carried forth before was a may alternative, if you will. The amendment changes that to shall not be utilized to meet fill mitigation requirements. I move for the introduction of that ordinance, which is an amendment to the original ordinance.
Motion by Mr. Motion by Mr. Taladano, second by Mr. Mr. Fitzgerald. Mr. Smith. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry.
This is a very critical piece of legislation we're getting ready to consider here. And I think I muddled through what my colleague was saying, but this is the same one that we talked about the other week, where the shall nots will replace the mays?
Yes, sir.
And that's basically the gist of the amendments?
Yes, sir. That's,
Thank you.
Mr. Smith, this is the exact one we spoke about last week.
Right.
And all it says is you change may to shall not, and it's just for reintroduction, and it'll come up at our next meeting.
Thank you.
Okay. Correct, sir. Yeah. Mr. Tanner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You got
Mr.
Richard's
Chairman,
on?
I think it's probably inappropriate to be amending an ordinance that we don't even know really what it says. And in that case, I move that we table this ordinance and the pending amendments until we can get a better handle on what we're doing with this fill mitigation ordinance.
Ms. Rouse?
Y'all voted to amend this at the special meeting, I believe?
Yes.
So you just need to reintroduce
That
it
is
to lay
correct.
over until next month?
That is correct.
Motion, Mr. Lorena.
That is correct. This was discussed at length for 3 hours at the special meeting we had last week, and it received a unanimous vote of everybody that was there. And the motion was to change may to shall not. And that's what we're doing right now, is reintroducing it. And it'll come back up again in September, and the whole thing will be laid out again, and any amendments can be put on. And if it's another amendment put on, it would lay over again. Mr. Stefanski. I'm sorry, Mr. Tanner had a motion, though. Did I hear a second to that motion? Hearing no second. Mr. Stefanski.
Yes, I think somebody needs to, I don't understand where you're going with this. As chairman, you either got to vote on the amendments and then submit it and reintroduce it, or use a substitute motion to put it in place, and it'll stay like it is until next month with the amendments. So one of those two things needs to happen. It can't.
Ms. Rouse?
You already voted on the
Right,
amendment at the
right.
special council meeting last week, so all you have to do, and you've already done it, you've got a motion and a second to introduce. So if any further amendments happen next month, you'll have to do the same thing over again.
That is correct.
But you voted last week at the special meeting.
But
You're on, Steve.
okay, how do you, not
Steve, put Steve on. You got more?
He's on. You went back and reintroduced this?
Go ahead, Steve.
You went back and reintroduced this?
We're reintroducing it right now, as we speak.
What, if you're reintroducing it, you haven't voted on an amendment yet?
We did. You voted on the amendment last week, and we're reintroducing what you voted on last week.
At the special meeting.
That
you're
is
talking about.
correct, and it has to lay over because we did not have enough time between then to actually vote on it tonight.
Okay, understand, thank you.
Okay, you got it? Good. Thank you. Mr. Bellicero.
I'll withdraw.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Canulette, but I have two people that on here, and I would like them to at least have a chance to come up. Mr. Champagne?
Michael Champagne, 146 Northridge Drive.
3 minutes, thank you.
I was incorrectly credited with living in Spring Lakes by a lady over there last week, but that's okay. I just want to say, in regard to this 6066, when we do get to the finalization of this activity, that there should be no compromise of any sort with regard to the new shall not references in all of these paragraphs. It's very important that that be maintained. Also want to reiterate what I said the other night about stepped up enforcement in this parish. We are currently dealing with a violation at Spring Lakes of an unapproved berm that's under cease and desist by the parish, and the folks are out there working on it today. So this is where the enforcement comes in. And I just strongly encourage that we put more funds in the enforcement budget, because I can't be chasing these people around the parish. Somebody's got to be watching over what these folks are doing. And they'll do anything to get around what's required of them to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Administration, Ms. President Brister?
I'm going to ask Cindy if he will explain, because we've talked about this all day.
Thank you. Sydney?
Yeah, just a quick timeline on what happened with the berm. Our staff became aware that work had been done.
Is the mic on?
Going back and reviewing the hydrological study to make sure that it has not been something that had been approved. Once we determined it was not something that was approved, we did the cease and desist. We have met with the developers' representatives on at least 2 occasions, including Mr. Thompson has been out there, Public Works has been out there. We found out today, just before noon, that additional work was being done, and we are beginning to take action to correct that action.
Thank you, sir.
But there is a time frame that we have to do that. You can't do it the minute you find out about it, as you all know.
Yeah,
There's a process that we have to go through.
We have to take the steps of posting, notification, service, all those types of issues.
Thank you. Thank you.
Excuse me, I'd like,
Yeah, you still have, you have a minute
what I'd
left.
like to say as a compliment to the Enforcement and Planning Department, within an hour or an hour and a half of my notifying them of this activity today, there was somebody out there from the parish.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Mr. Allen?
Thank you, Chairman Lorino. It's Matthew Allen, 13058 Major Lane, Folsom. My first reason was for coming was to have y'all strike out that last sentence in those cases where the fill mitigation required. I'm glad to see y'all did that. And also, I was a little concerned and confused that it was under ordinances for adoption today. So I think you clarified that you're just reintroducing it today. And the only other thing is you'll probably hear some speeches by developers about property rights and all. But floodplains actually serve a public purpose. And the public purpose of transferring massive amounts of water from heavy rainfalls we get to Lake Pontchartrain make it the floodplains a public entity. And everybody in this parish and the people of the parish have a right to control what can happen in the floodplains because it can have such negative effects on people.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Oh, no, that's all I had to say anyway.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we had a motion by Mr. Taladano and a second by Mr. Fitzgerald. Seeing no one else, please vote. We don't have to vote? Okay, thank you. Disintroduce. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, number 2, ordinance calendar number 6163AA, ordinance to amend ordinance CS number 18-3881, the 2018 grant budget. Mr. Taladano?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Taladano, second by Mr. Balisaro. Please vote. You gotta hit it.
It's okay. I'll take that.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Thank you. Number 3, ordinance calendar number 6186, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 1.12 acres from HC-2 to A-4A, Ward 8, District 13. Ms. Blanchard?
So, second.
Motion to postpone by Ms. Blanchard, second by Mr. Balisaro. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Number 4, ordinance calendar number 6193, ordinance to relocate precincts 901, 913, 915 in Slidell from North Shore Square Mall to True Life Church. This was adopted at the special council meeting. Motion by Mr. Stevanski. Well, we need no. We got it. It was already done. Number 5, ordinance calendar number 6195, ordinance to extend for 6 months the moratorium on property within the defined area within Township 8 South, Range 14 East, Section 13 of St. Tammany Parish, Council District 14. Mr. Smith?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Balisaro. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Number 6, ordinance calendar number 6196, ordinance to amend the 2019 operating budget, amendment number 7. Mr. Taladano?
So move. Ask Ms. Leslie to provide a brief explanation. Same.
Mr. Toledano, this ordinance is to amend Lighting District 7 to increase the budget for $100,000 for additional lighting along Oak Harbor.
Thank you.
Second on the motion.
Motion by Mr. Toledano, second by Mr. Balisaro. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Number 7, ordinance calendar number 6197, ordinance to impose a 6-month moratorium on property within a portion of unincorporated town of Alton subdivision, Ward 9, District 14. Mr. Smith?
So move.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Balisaro. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Number 8, ordinance calendar number 6198, ordinance amending the parish code of ordinance relative to building permits by adding a new fee relative to handicap ramps.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Balisaro, second by Mr. Canulet. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Number 9, ordinance calendar number 6199, ordinance declare multiple tax adjudicated properties as surplus property, Ward 8, 9, 13. Mr. Bender? Motion by Mr. Bender, second by Mr. Stefancic. Please vote.
Mr. Toledano? Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Number 10, ordinance calendar number 6200, ordinance authorizing the parish of St. Tammany through the office of the parish president to enter into asset transfer agreement with Centerpoint Energy for natural gas service to Safe Haven. Ward 4, District 7, Mr. Grovey.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Grovey, second by Mr. Balisaro. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Number 11, ordinance calendar number 6201, ordinance authorizing the parish president to enter into a servitude agreement with Clico Power for electric service to Safe Haven Utilities. Mr. Grovey.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Grovey, second by Mr. Balisaro. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Number 12, ordinance calendar number 6202, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 8 acres located east of Press Sharp Road, north of Otis Sharp Road from A-1 Suburban District to A-1A Suburban District and MHO Manufactured Housing Overlay, Ward 2, District 6. Mr. Tanner?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Tanner, second by Mr. Thompson. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
13, ordinance calendar number 6203, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 1 acre from A-2, A-3, Ward 1, District 1. Mr. Dean? Motion by Mr. Dean, second by Mr. Thompson. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Number 14, ordinance calendar number 6204, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 0.67 acres from NC-4 and A-2 to NC-4 Neighborhood Institutional District, Ward 1, District 1. Motion by Mr. Dean, second by Mr. Thompson. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
15, ordinance calendar number 6205, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 1 acre from A-1 to A-1 and MHO, Ward 1, District 3. Mr. Thompson. Motion by Mr. Thompson, second by Mr. Toledano. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Okay, number 16, ordinance calendar number 6206, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 0.25 acres from A-2 to A-2 and MHO, Ward 7, District 7. Mr. Groby?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Groby, second by Ms. O'Brien. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Number 17, ordinance calendar number 6207, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 1.6 acres from A-2 MHO and RO to A-3 MHO and RO, Ward 5, District 6.
So moved.
That's Mr. Tanner's motion and Mr. Thompson, and we have two people that would like to speak on this. Mr. Mary Stone? Ma'am, you okay? Thank you. And Judy Cannon, you okay? Okay. Motion by Mr. Tanner and second by Mr. Thompson. Please vote.
Mr. Toledano?
I hear it twice. Yes.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Number 18, ordinance calendar number 6208, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 9.84 acres from A-1 to A-1A, Ward 2, District 6. Mr. Tanner?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Tanner, second by Mr. Toledano. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Number 19, ordinance calendar number 6209, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 1.68 acres from A-1 to A-1 and MHO, Ward 1, District 3.
So moved.
Short-term rentals.
Motion by Mr. Thompson, second by Mr. Dean. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Number 20, ordinance calendar number 6210, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 10.45 acres from A-2 and A-3 to A-2, A-3 and RO, Ward 4, District 5. Mr. Toledano?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Toledano, second by Mr. Thompson. Please vote.
Mr. Toledano? Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Number 21, ordinance calendar number 6211, ordinance accepting the final subdivision into roads and drainage inventories, specifically Hidden Creek subdivision, Phase 1A. Motion by Mr. Thompson, second by Mr. Balisaro. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Number 22, ordinance calendar number 6210, ordinance accepting the final subdivisions into the roads and drainage inventory, specifically Grande Mason subdivision, Phase 3.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Balisaro, second by Mr. Toledano. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Okay. Discussion in other matters, discussion regarding the short-term rental ordinance, which was referred back to the parish council by the parish zoning committee. an ordinance to amend and react to St. Tammany Parish Code of Ordinance, Chapter 22, Licenses, and Chapter 130, Unified Development Code to provide definition and regulations regarding short-term rentals, to add short-term rentals as a permitted use in certain commercial and mixed-use zoning districts within unincorporated St. Tammany Parish, and to provide for penalties and fines for violations. I'm going to form a committee and ask Mr. Skavancic to chair that committee. Mr. Skavancic, do you want to speak on it?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Lorino's asked me to chair a group to develop an ordinance that takes into consideration the constituents of St. Tammany Parish and also taking into consideration all of the needs of St. Tammany Parish. This is a problem all over the United States and escalates in places like New Orleans and the surrounding areas. There are over 300 or approximately 300 plus short-term rentals in St. Tammany Parish. I've been working with Carlin Riles from our legal department and to get a background and understanding of what's happening in other places. And just as a side note, I would tell you that we've been following New Orleans and we've been following Jefferson Parish and we've been following a lot of other places, but Jefferson hasn't had any problems at all. New Orleans keeps shifting theirs, and today it is interesting that they've changed theirs to be almost more in line with ours. People were telling us to follow them. They're now changing theirs to be more in line with what we were doing with zoning rather than doing it by geographic delineation. So what I'd like to do is form a group, and it's a work group much like the field ordinances that Mr. Lorino's heading up, and that group will consist of 3 to 5 council persons, 1 person from the Department of Development, 1 from legal, 3 to 4 people representing both sides of the issues, and I'm saying 3 to 4 on each side, so that we can get a pretty good sounding from the people who are doing short-term rentals as well as the sounding from the people who are opposed to them. I'm asking anyone who's interested in serving on this work group to submit their names and background to the parish council office so that we can receive them all, review them, and then we will start holding monthly meetings to develop an ordinance that we think that the council will be interested in. And we will keep the council informed each month, if that's possible, on the where we are in the development of this thing. So with that,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. We'll get started on that very shortly, Steve. Okay. Number 2, motion to refer to zoning commission for recommendation of proposed rezoning of 1.01 acres from public facility district zoning to residential zoning, Ward 3, District 3. Mr. Fitzgerald? We have a motion by Mr. Fitzgerald and a second by Mr. Dean, but I have one card. Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you. Carla Hernandez. I just want to point out to the council what's about to be done, and that is the waiver of fees. The thing never says that, but that's in effect what happens. And the $250 processing fee is going to be waived. The $75 advertising fee, which you're going to advertise anyway, is going to be waived. And the $50 single family for 1 acre is going to be waived. So that's $375 that's about to be waived. And I just want you to note that whenever you're considering fees and other things regarding the amounts of monies that the parish is considering. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. Staff?
Is it on?
You go ahead.
Okay, good.
You go ahead, Terry.
This is an injustice that we're trying to right. There was a individual who donated an acre of her property to the fire district for the construction of a new station. The fire district went ahead and had the property rezoned to public facilities. After they did that, several months went by, they went back to the person that donated the property to them and said, we're not going to build a station. So they gave the property back to her. All she's trying to do is to take this 1 acre and put it with the remaining portion of her property and get it back to its original zone.
Thank you, Mr. Hand. Seeing no one in the queue, please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Having nothing else? Yes, sir.
Everybody knows today is qualifications day, right? And several people up here got back on board without having any opponents, but I want to tell you, the newest addition to the parish council is Mr. Jake Airy, who's sitting back here, and he will be taking over the District 13 seat. So wanted to make sure that he got an introduction tonight. He's been sitting out here for, this meeting and several others, so thank you.
Mr. Canulat.
Get someone to fix this sound system, please.
Yes. Thank you. Seeing nothing else, meeting adjourned.
That's what they can't blame on me.
Done.